Louise, how are you? Thanks for joining us. Yeah, how's things with you?
Great, really good. Although still recovering from, I did my first Swift Invitational race this morning. The ladies off the map tour, and I've recently, that's my lockdown thing, has been Swift, which has been a bit of a saviour, and it's definitely improving my cycling. But wow, those ladies are so strong. I just got spat out the back after 5 minutes. So yeah.
Yeah, I will admit, I try and avoid it if possible, Swift, only because, it's I just struggle with that online platform. Although I fully understand that has a place, and it's been so beneficial during COVID.
Absolutely.
Can I just ask then, from a COVID point of view, and you've mentioned it already, I'm assuming that seriously impacted your year as regards to training and racing?
Well, yeah, because there are no races. I was really hoping that this year was going to be like a really big year for me in terms of age group racing. I mean, I've been doing it 10 years, 12 years now, and sort of in the GB team for about 10 years. And I was supposed to be going to Edmonton for the World Championships, and Edmonton I was supposed to be going to the Aquathon Championships in the Netherlands, also Tartu for the Europeans as well. And I've just gone up an age group to the 45 to 49. So, I was a baby in my age group, so that was all good. And new coach had been going well as well. And hey, no races, but not a lot you can really do about that.
It derailed so many people this year, and there's worse things than not being able to race and train. But when it's a huge part of your life, I got so many athletes that I talk to at the moment, and not that they're twiddling their thumbs, but they're itching to do something, and the biggest thing, and again, I brought you on to talk about yoga, and we'll get to that in a moment. But the one thing that I'm trying to hold people back on is all of a sudden they're going to go too much too soon because they haven't trained properly for months, and they're just going to go straight in and think that they can do the levels that they were doing probably pre-COVID.
We always just remember, I remember one of my coaches saying this to me, I think it was Michelle. She said, you always remember yourself at your fastest, right? So once you've had a break, which we all need to do because we're not machines, we're humans, you have a break, and then you go back into the pool or whatever, and you always remember the times that you were smashing out your best 400 time or whatever in the pool. And you need to build up to that place. I would say though, I'm trying to look at this year as more of an opportunity. So like the Swift has been really good in terms of cycling is my weakness. So just building up my FTP and that kind of thing, and also having a little bit more fun away from the schedule of racing. And it's a good time for people to try different things, like I've been trying Swift, or for example, if you've not tried yoga or kind of flexibility training, if you want to call it, that kind of thing instead, to just try different things, whilst you can. And then you can take those into next year if they work for you.
And we've been saying to people that this is an opportunity now. It's like an extended winter. It's a chance to maybe even look at one or two little things that aren't working well. Maybe you've been carrying a niggle for a little while. It's an opportunity to really try and sort that out, and then really go into next year as healthy and as fit as you potentially could be. And I think a lot of people get that. It's encouraging to see anyway. And I suppose you've mentioned it already. The good thing is the people that have coaches out there have someone who is potentially removed from their training situation to say, no, you're not going in that quickly and doing that. Let's build up, let's do it correctly, and let's do it effectively as well.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, and that's kind of a lot of people that are into tri have that kind of personality, and I have it too, of like, let's go 110% all, you know, kind of all the time. And we can't do that. As I've just said, you know, we're not machines, we're human. And that's one of the things I always start my classes off with. I'm like, leave your competitive tri nature off the mat. You know, this is not about, for example, doing the amazing splits, or yeah, those are really cool poses, the handstands and things like that, but we don't need to do that. And that's not what it's really for. It's all about, you know, moving better, recovering better, and maybe just being, you know, more efficient, as a, you know, making your body a bit more efficient.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think you're 100% right. So before we go into the yoga side of things, whenever I get a guest on, I always ask them about their journey into triathlon. So where did it start from you, and you know, where was the motivation to take up the sport?
How long have you got, Andrew? We could talk about this like
We've got 10 minutes.
yeah, 10 minutes. Okay. I mean, I've been doing tri now for about 12 years or so, and I wasn't massively sporty as a kid. I had quite bad asthma. I played a bit of tennis, did a bit of swimming, you know, then found boys and going out and all that kind of thing, and that was far more fun than doing sport. But I guess it wasn't really to kind of my mid-20s, after I'm an accountant as well, and I had a secondment in Australia, when I drank far too much beer, gained a whole lot of weight, came back and looked at myself in the mirror at kind of age 25 and thought, right, you need to get yourself down the gym, love. You need to sort it out. You're not getting any younger. And so, yeah, off I went to the gym. And that's kind of where it started.
And so was it a few years of sort of, you know, hitting around the gym before you got into triathlon, or was there a step before that? Did you take up one of the disciplines first?
Yeah, I took up so at the gym I started, you know, lifting weights, and that's when I actually started doing yoga. But I then got into running because that seemed to give me I liked the headspace it gave me. It dropped the weight pretty quickly. I liked the leaner look and all that kind of thing, purely shallow. So I started running one summer from kind of like 20 minutes up to 2 hours. Decided when it started to get into winter that I wanted to run with a club, run with other people. It was safer. So I joined a club in London and started running with them. Everyone was doing marathons. That seemed normal.
Yeah.
So I started running more, and I did a couple of marathons. Buggered up my knees, excuse my French, doing those marathons, and I couldn't run for 3 months because I'd did ITB stuff, and hurt my knees.
And can I just ask, you say you
Yeah.
buggered up your knees. Was that because you potentially went too quick, too soon, or just maybe weren't entirely sure how you progress to marathon level?
I probably did too much too soon running. I also, you know, I was like, yeah, okay, I'm going to start running and go straight to good for age 3:45, and then I'm going to aim for 3:15. And it's like, you've only been running a year or 18 months, love. What are you doing? You know. I think also I listened to faster runners who told me to wear fast shoes, and actually for someone that was running my kind of level slower, that was the wrong thing to do for my body. So those kind of shoes just meant they didn't give me the support that I needed, and I hurt my knees. It also meant I didn't have, and we go a little bit into the biomechanics and all that kind of thing, I didn't have the stability and glute strength and all that kind of thing that I needed in order to run those long distances.
Yeah. And I'll jump in here because it's partly where some of my injuries come from lately. So for the last 12 months or so, I've really had niggles around my glutes, sort of my lower back, so the QLs and things like that.
Yeah.
And it's all come from, so my background is football and rugby and going to the gym, and I did that all through my 20s. I came to my early teens and took up triathlon, and as we know, triathlon takes up a lot of your time. And what suffered for me was the gym work and the flexibility work. So which meant then that the strength that I did have around my glutes and my hamstrings and my lower back slowly started to decrease.
Yeah.
And that's probably where I am now, is I need to build it back up. And, before we came on camera, I said to you, we're not getting any younger. So, and that's where my interest in flexibility routines, yoga, Pilates, and whatever else is out there that you can use.
Yeah.
That's where my interest comes from.
It is hard with a sport that you spend so much time doing, and let's face it, the things like yoga and Pilates, they're not actually going to make you faster, right? Doing the track sessions or, the hard FTP things and things like that, that is actually what's going to get you faster. However, if you're constantly, your body is breaking down and you keep getting injured and you're not able to recover quickly from that hard session to do the next session the next day, that is overall going to have an impact. Yeah. And it, I don't know, loads of coaches bang on about consistency. And if you keep getting injured, you're not going to get that consistency. And that's when, the stability work with Pilates comes in, some of the gym work comes in, and the yoga flexibility stuff comes in. It's an add-on, right? That is just going to hopefully mean that you can, I would love it when my students just say things like, well, I just, I had a really hard race and I just felt much better after doing that. Or it just means I can maybe do that session tomorrow that I didn't normally be able to do, or things are just a little bit easier and I'm a little bit less sore and I just can sleep a bit better. It's getting those, I'd say, marginal gains, but
yeah, but
it's that little bit extra.
They all add up. Those little 0.5% or 1%, so they all add up. Yeah. And it's often easier to do 10 things and improve it by 1% than one thing and improve it by 10%. We often not talk about those gains. So after the running, and trying to sort of take a step up to marathon level and things, what was the next step for you?
So the next step actually was an ex-boyfriend gave me a bicycle, and because I couldn't run, I started cycling. And then the next step, because I'd done a bit of swimming as a kid, was to do a triathlon, which I did Brighton Marina Triathlon. Even though I went the wrong way on the bike, had a panic attack in the swim, I loved it. I really, really enjoyed it. And I think someone that likes a varied life, 3 sports was brilliant. And also because I'm not like gifted in one. Probably I'm most gifted in transitions, if anything. And so it suits me.
Yeah.
And I think I then went, I dabbled a little bit with different distances. I did a half distance the following 2 years. The year later, I only half distance. My knees still hurt. So I had to walk during some of the run. And I decided, well, I'm going to concentrate on sprint and Olympic distance because my body can handle those.
Yeah.
Let's see if I can get fitter and faster at those. Had a good race. I think when was that? I think it was 2009. Had a really good race. One of my, I think it was 3rd Olympic or something like that, and realized, holy shit, I could have qualified for the GP team. How freaking cool is that? And that's when the sort of GB, triathlon age group team thing started. And I think I've competed every single year since 2010
Oh wow.
for the team.
Uh,
And I'm getting faster, touch wood, somewhere. Which, you know, I think is quite a claim actually, as you get older, to get faster.
I think so. And you know, and I think experience definitely helps. You know, I remember the first few races I did, and I was one of these stupid ones who signed up for an Ironman as my first event.
Ooh,
Then thankfully my other half said to me, "Don't you
you're
think you better
braver
do?"
than me. You're braver than me.
My other half said, "Don't you think you better do a shorter event to begin with?" Which so obviously I found a half Ironman anyway. But it's funny. As a kid, I used to be the fastest guy on the football pitch or the rugby pitch, and it's as I got older, I'm enjoying the more endurance things. I think it's because I've lost that pace, and I know I can't be the fastest on the pitch or on the race or whatever. So at least I want to try and go as far as I possibly can for myself.
Yeah,
And so last year I did an ultra marathon, and that was my first one, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. And I think I'll probably stick at that longer distance now. But as the wear and tear on the body, I think is enhanced with that, and that's probably where some of my injuries have been flaring up from.
yeah, absolutely. I know, like one of the groups that I teach is my local tri club, and the whole group of them were doing, I think it was Ironman Wales actually, a couple of years ago, and they getting the guys in to do yoga, because guys don't generally do yoga. It's a girls thing.
Yeah.
You know, it's been really beneficial for them, and getting them in and doing something just to let their bodies recover a bit better, you know, release some of that soreness and tightness, help protect their lower back a little bit, because you know our lower backs get an absolute hammering with the bike and the run. They really do, let alone just sitting at your desk or your car.
And it's funny you say that. Again, it's another issue that I have is my lower back, and it's because I sit at a desk all day. I'm outside of the podcast. I work for the NHS. I have a desk job, but then whenever I've done a class, yoga class, I come away and it's that feeling of standing tall. Like
Yeah.
you just feel like you've been released, and all of a sudden I'm walking down the street like Mr. Soft, the old Treebos sort of advert. And I love it. But unfortunately, with COVID and things, I hadn't been able to do as much live classes, and I feel I get quite a bit out of the live class, but then the digital stuff or the virtual stuff definitely has a
Have you
place.
tried Zoom classes and things like that as well?
Not so much Zoom classes, but definitely things from YouTube, and we'll go into that in a moment, actually. But you then sort of got into triathlon. When did the yoga come into it for you?
I'd actually started yoga before doing tri, and I think initially I was doing yoga like a triathlete. Okay, so what I mean by that is I was going to do the really, really hard stuff, and going in, you know, so, and don't get me wrong, I love these classes that, you know, one of my favorite teachers in London does, but I will sweat as much in her class as I will on a turbo session, for example, like a race today. And I did realize, it probably took me longer than it should have done, but I realized I had to back off from doing the hard yoga, like 75%, you know, 7 out of 10 effort in the yoga class, in order to adapt it to my training. Because otherwise I was getting stuff like cramp and things like that. And it wasn't really, and I would go and do an hour and a half class and then not go back for 2 weeks because I couldn't fit it in with work and training and social life and that kind of thing. And it wasn't really until I did my yoga teacher training, which was now 3 years ago, and I had to do more yoga, so, you know, several times a week, and learn more about my body, and how your body works, that I suddenly realized, oh, how to fit this in with triathlon. And I realized that I wasn't getting so injured by doing it more frequently, and just backing off from the intensity of doing everything so hard, and doing more easy, gentle stuff. I mean, I know some people don't like doing yoga because it's boring and it's just lying around on the floor. But, you know, after a hard training session, that's a perfect thing to do, you know.
And I think, and we said beforehand, we might try and like look at some of the barriers, and there's definitely some sort of perceptual or mental barriers that people have of yoga, and they think it's all, sort of, very much, just lying around, that it's boring or whatever. But what I personally think it gives you, from not only from a physical point of view, but a mental point of view, it gives you an opportunity just to focus the mind and just to try and relax, because we all lead busy lifestyles, and no doubt the majority of the people that do triathlon regularly, they've got busy lives, they've got family time, they've got their training time, and then you're trying to fit everything else in between that. But for me, going to a yoga class, and I haven't been to many, I will admit that, but I just love that opportunity to sit down. I'm at the beginning of a class, normally the teacher that I've gone to, it's just that moment, right? Sit on the mat, close your eyes, focus where you are, try and get your head into a place ready for the session ahead. And for me, I love that.
Yeah, it's that. I mean, we could do a whole, perhaps we should, about the mindfulness aspects of yoga, and how mindfulness and that kind of thing, and the mental side, can help you as an athlete, because very much learning how you're able to de-stress, especially in a stressful situation, to de-stress, slow down your thinking, slow down your breathing, relax, concentrate, and really focus on what you've got to do. I mean, certainly with triathlon, you've got so many different things going on, right? And so many things can happen on the day, that if you're able to make better decisions on what comes up, like, someone cuts you up, or you've forgotten this bit of kit, or you drop your nutrition and that kind of thing, if you are better able to okay, use, for example, I know some of the athletes I've worked with and age groupers, they've used the kind of like just slow breathing, chill out for a moment. Okay, what am I going to do now? I mean, that's just in a race kind of situation.
And I give you a perfect example of it. Changing a tire. I have seen people lose their head completely over changing a tire. And actually, I got another example. So in Ironman Wales, I go down every year to watch, and on one year, a guy had a flat tire right in front of me. He is literally 400 yards from, well, maybe a bit longer, maybe like 800 yards from transition. But it's up a hill, whatever. He needs to change a tire before he gets there. His head totally went. He couldn't even get the tire off. He couldn't focus on what to do and the order to do it in. And literally, I couldn't help him because it's against the rules of Ironman, which is, in my opinion, ridiculous. But anyway, so we have to just say to him, slow down,
breathe.
Yeah, exactly.
Number one, breathe.
Just think about what you need to do. I will hold the bike, but I can't do much more. And, we got him through it, but literally he probably wasted more time fretting at the beginning rather than actually changing the tire.
I think there's also in a yoga class, you're learning to become, because I mean, I constantly talking about how are you feeling, how is your body feeling, and it's that building that awareness of your own body, and your mental state, and how they interact. and that, I mean, that can help, for example, when you're, you know, when you're training really hard, one, focusing on the process and exactly what's happening in that moment rather than getting carried away. It can also help where you're thinking more about, okay, so I've got to stand up tall, I've got to take my shoulders back, you know, whatever example that your coach might have told you, in order to stand up tall and run better and run more efficiently. And it's also that just understanding your body better, and also catching it before it gets really injured.
Yeah.
So is that's a niggle I haven't had before. Okay, let's take a step back from it and not push it so hard to the point where it breaks.
Yeah. And as triathletes, I think we sometimes have the mindset that it's okay to have a niggle and I will continue until it starts hurting. And you know, it's a given that you will train on injuries. And you know, I've got a number of physio friends and things like that, and they often say, no, it's not the way to do it. If something is hurting, stop, think about what you can do and not what you can't do because of the pain.
Yeah, and you know, like in my classes, I always talk about, this isn't supposed to hurt. Yes, you might have some mild discomfort, stretchy sensation, or as my one of my yoga teachers calls it, the pain of transformation. You know, because we are as teachers changing or adapting soft tissue, right? But it's not supposed, well, you're not supposed to get to the point where you can't breathe, where you're like making strange faces and grimacing, and unless that's your natural face, of course, or like, you know, sweating or shaking, that kind of thing. No, that's not.
And I suppose it's good that you say about that, because you know, when I first started going to classes, I used to think I had to stretch my body, as you know, to the point which I couldn't stretch it anymore, to the point that it was not potentially painful, but again, it was difficult to breathe and things. And I think again, it's some of the perception of what yoga is against what it should be. You know, and so you know,
Yoga really is for everybody. Yeah, and there isn't one way particularly of doing something. You know, at the end of the day, yoga and all the postures and that kind of thing was all made up. And as long as you understand why you're doing something and how it's helping generally people's bodies, then you can almost do what you like. That's really you have to be really informed about what you're doing. So, for example, I try and do with some of my classes, because we do a lot of this with our cycling, stretching our necks out, right? So always do a bit which is stretching it the other way.
yeah.
Or I don't do a lot now I don't do anything that I think is compressing your lower back. So, you know, the really forced up backward back bends and things like that, we don't need to do those as athletes. We've got enough compression in our lower backs. So it's more about the upper back and getting a little bit of extension here and that kind of thing. So does that make sense?
Yeah, no, 100%. Yeah, I sort of doing it myself then.
Yeah.
I was doing it because I'm a bugger. That I have, you know, rounded shoulders because I have a desk job. Probably I'm on my phone too much, so I'm sort of what's it called,
Turtleneck
neck.
or iPhone
Yeah,
neck.
yeah.
Yeah, and there's that. I mean, you see it with when you know when you're running and you're getting fatigued, the shoulders come round and round and round this. So that's why it's always like, okay, shoulders back and down, get taller, this kind of thing. And you know, I focus on, of course, it makes sense to focus on your hip flexors because they're always really tight with running and cycling, and also the spine and how the spine's moving. Because if your spine isn't moving correctly, problems are just going to radiate out.
Yeah.
So always start with all the different moves that the spine is supposed to go through, and doing some like side bending and lateral movement and, you know, rotation because especially with triathlon, we're moving in just like backward forwards. So it's very what they call sagittal, forwards and backwards, and we're not moving side to side. So it's getting some of that side bending through your body, which I think is really, really important.
So if you were to advise a triathlete who was sort of new to yoga, or came to you and sort of said, oh, I'm stiff, and what I'd like to try and do is incorporate a little bit more strength and flexibility into my training, how would you personally advise them?
Well, I'd first say, what are you trying to achieve? How much time have you got?
Yeah.
And have an open mind and be patient, because flexibility, or trying to change your flexibility or mobility, does take time. It takes, changing your flexibility takes more time than getting strong or getting fitter, but it stays for longer. I would also say, like, try different teachers, go to different classes, find one that works for you. Just don't go to one and they've got loads of candles and incense and that isn't your thing, and so that's yoga and everybody teaches like that. Try different things. Try some YouTube stuff. Just incorporate it into your like everyday. If I was specifically working with one person, the first thing to do with that one person is actually assess how they move, and what is the things that they are, what kind of range of motion is restricted. So, would look at kind of go through various range of test motion things, which, like, your hamstrings, can you touch your toes, I don't know, your dorsiflexion of your ankles. So it's run through various tests, and just see then what other things that you really need to work on first. And it would be understanding, what injuries they've had as well, for example. But just for like the general triathlete or wanting to go to a yoga class, I would say just try some different classes. Don't go for like the really hard stuff, because you do enough of that already. It's funny, we like to go and do the things that we're good at, obviously. Okay. Yeah. So you might be better at the really hard power yoga, but probably what you more need is the more yin or restorative or relaxing yoga for you.
I think so. It's definitely a case of and also start small. We are guilty, and and I said this already. When I came into sport, I went and signed up for a silly distance race rather than starting small, and from that experience, that is why I often say to people through the channel, start small, keep it simple. When you first come into the sport, beg, borrow and steal equipment. Don't go out and buy a $4,000 bike. You don't need it yet. Test it, see what works for you, and build from there. And that's exactly what I would suggest to people from a yoga point of view as well.
Go along and try some different classes, and then if you can regularly go to a class a week, that's brilliant. And build it in, if you can, to the time when you need it most. So maybe it's after doing your long run on a Sunday, you find a Sunday afternoon class, or a Monday evening class. I mean, I do classes on a Monday evening and a Tuesday evening, and we've done them for my triathlon club on a Tuesday evening, because it's straight after their hard run session. So that, that's great timing. And I don't get them to do the really hard stuff. I get them all chilled out and nicely relaxed first, and then it's the stuff that complements the running. Because it's not about, and sometimes maybe people are scared, or I've heard even coaches go, oh well, but it's good to have a bit of stiffness, stretching, maybe, you know, you don't want people to be too flexible, and that's right, you don't want people to be too flexible. And if you're hypermobile, which some people are, generally more women, then actually yoga is not a good idea for them. So it isn't for everybody, and things like Pilates and more stability work is probably better for them, right? But certainly a lot of the, let's say, middle-aged guys doing Ironman and things like that, who aren't flexible, who are stiff, who have a sore lower back, absolutely fabulous. That's, you know, it's perfect for them.
And we mentioned it earlier, or I mentioned it. You know, what's your thoughts on, you know, online classes? Because I know you do deliver some, and then sort of YouTube class or videos, sort of, you know, in between as well. You know, what's your thoughts on a lot of that?
In terms of like during your general training week, or just doing that instead of going to live classes? Because, you know, we're generally as triathletes, and certainly age group triathletes, we're time poor.
Yeah.
So it's getting your best bang for your buck. And certainly, you know, doing some of the YouTube videos, I've got some YouTube videos of some fantastic stuff by Adrian, Yoga for Adrian online.
Yeah,
very, very popular. You know, just doing a few of those a week, like 15 minutes or whatever, is brilliant. It's certainly better than not doing it at all, right? The Zoom classes, which is one of the things that COVID has given us as an opportunity, is amazing because you don't have to go anywhere.
How do people connect with yourself? Are your classes available to all the online classes?
Yes, yeah. So I do a Monday evening class and 2 Tuesday evening classes. The Tuesday ones are specifically yoga for sports or like triathletes. So it's very much geared to that type of population. And I do them via Zoom, and I'm always posting on my Facebook page. So that's Try Louise Yoga, and on Instagram as well. And just come and join in a class and see. And hey, if you don't like my classes, go and find somebody else that you do like, but don't give up on yoga, you know.
No, and like I said already, I'm an advocate of it, and it has a place and it has a huge benefit as well. Especially, my personal belief is for the athletes as they're getting a little bit older and just need that extra thing to help them recover quicker and just get back into the next training session.
Yeah, because the thing is as our bodies age, the muscles and everything get less elastic. We know, you know, it's that wake up in the morning and you've got, as I call them, old lady legs after doing a session, you know, they're tired and stuff. And if I've skipped my yoga, because sometimes we can be all the same. It's like sit in the garden with a glass of wine or go and do my yoga, you know. And some days, you know, I'm not the perfect student. Some days I go, no, I just want a bag of crisps and a glass of wine. I don't want to do my yoga. But I do realize it the next day.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree with you on that one. 100%. Louise, thank you very much for coming on. It's been a pleasure to talk to you. We'd love to have you on in the future, and no doubt there's other topics that we can bring up around yoga. You know, mindfulness was one that mentioned.
Yes, absolutely.
So maybe that's another one for the future. But anyway, thank you for coming on. It's been a pleasure to talk to you.
Lovely. Thanks very much, Andrew. Brilliant.